Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. This is Heidi from My Reading Life, and I'm here today to talk about one of my favorite events of the entire year, Nonfiction November. So this is going to be my proposed TBR for the month of November, for Nonfiction November, my pile of possibilities, and also my selections for the Skoden Readathon, which formerly was the Indigathon Readathon, so where you would read indigenous books, books by indigenous authors in the month of November. And I'm going to combine the two events, the Skoden Readathon and Nonfiction November, in this month. And I will link Olive's video from A Book Olive announcing Nonfiction November down below. And I will also link Kim from Native Lady Book Warriors channel, her video where she talks about the Skoden Readathon, down below, so you can check out all the prompts for the Skoden Readathon. There's a cool bingo board and a whole bunch of fun stuff like that. I'm just going to read nonfiction by Indigenous authors and combine that with my Nonfiction November reading. So Nonfiction November is a month-long readathon hosted by Olive at A Book Olive. It's been going on now for about 8 years. And every year Olive gives us 4 prompts to work with. But the only real requirement that for Nonfiction November is that you read nonfiction. So if you don't read any nonfiction, try to read one. If you read, more than that, try to read more than what you normally read. So I went back through my reading log and I checked, and I've read about 155 books so far this year through the month of September. I just looked through the month, through the end of the month of September. I read about 155 books, I think. 60% of that was nonfiction reading. And so it averages out to be about 10 nonfiction books a month. So I'm just going to try to read more than 10 for the Nonfiction Readathon. And I think I should be able to do that. I will link everything down below that gives you all the information for the 2 readathons, and hope that you will also be excited to join in with the fun. So the 4 prompts for Nonfiction November are record, element, border, and secret. You can use these prompts or not use them as you choose to. I have a stack of books here, and I've organized them into what I think they fit into for the 4 prompts, and I'm just going to talk about them in that way. So for the prompt element, the very first book that I have picked is the Book Naturalist Book Club pick for the month of November, Gathering Moss by Robin Wall Kimmerer. And this is also a book that would fit for Skoden Readathon because Robin Wall Kimmerer is an Indigenous author. The second book under the prompt element, I will be reading Oak Flat, A Fight for Sacred Land in the American West by Ronan, Redniss, and this is another Indigenous author. This is a book about an Apache family struggling to survive and dealing with a mining corporation. And this book also is has graphical elements as well. So I'm very excited to finally pick this one up, and glad to have the prompt element to get me to pick it up. I also wanted to show you, if you take the flap off, look how beautiful this book is underneath the dust flap. It's so awesome. So I picked this one for element because it is has to do with mining, and the element that they're mining is copper. And then lastly, in the element category, I have chosen to put on my TBR An Immense World by Yong. This is how animal senses reveal the hidden realms around us. Now you could also pick this one under secret. You could also put this one under secret, but I put it under element because it's about how animals use different parts of their environment and different senses to tell them about their world. And so there's a lot of different elements to how animals use their senses that are different than how humans use their senses. So I thought this would fit really well for element. Then the second prompt is record. And for record, I have quite a few. I have 5 different books that I have on my TBR here. The first one is one that I was hoping to get to in October and I never was able to. This is a memoir. It is The Beauty in Breaking by Michelle Harper. This is about a woman who goes to school to be a doctor, I believe. Yeah, she's an African-American woman who becomes an emergency room physician. And then as soon as she sort of gets settled in her profession, her husband asks for a divorce. And it's all about her experiences in trying to, navigate the divorce and to navigate being a physician. So this is her record, her memoir of that experience. And then secondly is a book off my ancient TBR. This is Stephen King's Hearts in Suspension with essays by his college classmates and friends. This is a book that was put out by the University of Maine Press a few years ago. It's a very large book, and it has a compilation basically of writings from different people who were in college the same time with Stephen King at the University of Maine at Orono. And he was in college during the time period when people were protesting the Vietnam War. And this is a collection of writings from people who were there at the same time as Stephen King. Stephen King writes about his thoughts about the war, and then these folks write about being in college and what it was like to experience that political time period while in that setting. And it also has an excerpt of Stephen King's book that he did start writing when he was in college called Hearts in Atlantis. So I have had this one on my TBR for quite a long time, and I feel like I am ready to finally pick this one up. Next is another book that would fit for the Skoden Readathon. This is Blanket Toss Under Midnight Sun by Paul Seesequasis. I'm going to find out how to pronounce that before I talk about it the next time. So this is a record of Indigenous folks taken with through photography and then writings about how Indigenous people experienced many of the hardships that they experienced during the 20th century when the white community were separating Indigenous folks from their children and sending them off to residential schools, and how that impacted the Indigenous communities and the Indigenous families. And so these writings and photographs serve as a reportage of that experience. The next book under record is Eleanor Roosevelt's My Day, Volume 2, The Post-War Years. So I have 3 volumes of these My Day columns. These were the newspaper columns that Eleanor Roosevelt wrote during her lifetime while she was married to Franklin Roosevelt. The first collection were the years that he was president before he passed away, and her record of what that was like to live as the first lady and to try to be making changes, things that she thought were important to be dealt with in the country at that time. These columns span the years after World War II was over and FDR had passed away, and what life was like in the United States at that point in time. And I'm really excited to dip back in to Eleanor Roosevelt's writings. I read Volume 1 in last year's NonFiction November Readathon. And then lastly, under record is a sports record book. This is All In by Billie Jean King. This is her autobiography of being a record-breaking female tennis player. And I don't know very much all about tennis, but I have heard that this is a really excellent autobiography. And Billie Jean King was a trailbreaker in terms of women's participation in elite sports. So very interested to see what this book is all about. Then the third prompt that I'm going to have some books for is Border. And the first one is an obvious pick for the prompt Border. This is Call Me American, The Extraordinary True Story of a Young Somali Immigrant, a memoir by Abdi Noor Iftin. And this is about a man who, immigrated from Somalia and came to live in the state of Maine, which is where I live. And I've heard very good things about this memoir. I've been wanting to get my hands on a copy of it, and I just received it as a birthday gift from my sister in October, so I'm really excited to finally get my hands on this book, and I think this will talk obviously about what it was like to cross borders and come to live in the United States, specifically in the state of Maine. And then again, another book for the Border prompt. This is Red Famine, Stalin's War on Ukraine by Anne Applebaum. I will be buddy reading this with Rachel in the month of November. And this, of course, is very important to be reading at this time period, considering what has been happening in the Ukraine over the last year with Russia's invasion of that country, crossing the border and trying to basically take over a country within its own borders. I think this obviously fits the Border prompt. And then last but not least, for Border, I have chosen The Edge of the Sea by Rachel Carson. And this is all about the border between land and sea. And she writes about all the different types of ecosystems that exist on this borderline between upland and ocean, rocky shores, mudflats, salt marshes, and other habitats that exist on the edge of the ocean. And I just love Rachel Carson's writing, which I have talked about many, many times. And I think this book is so lovely with these drawings, these illustrations of sea life and critters that you would find in that borderland between land and sea. And then the final prompt is secret. And for secret, I do have one book on my e-reader that I would like to get to, and that is Catch and Kill by Ronan Farrow. And this is the book about Harvey Weinstein and the secrets he was keeping about how he abused young women in the course of his job as a director. And I think that obviously would fit in the secret prompt because Weinstein was keeping that secret for a long time, as were his victims. And then I also have In Cold Blood by Truman Capote. This is the book that started it all when it comes to true crime and exposure of secrets kept by murderers. So that one's been something I've been wanting to read for a very long time. And then lastly, I have the Erratics by Vicki Laveau-Harvie. And this is about a young woman and her sister who have been living in Australia. Their parents are in Canada, and they get a call to come home and tend to their elderly parents. And when they get there, they find out that their father has been keeping a secret, and the secret is that their mother has been abusing their father. And so these two sisters have to deal with the fallout of tending and caring for elderly parents, and also dealing with the secret that's been kept within the family about how the mom has been treating the dad all these years. So I've also heard very good things about this one, and has been too long on my TBR. So those are the books that I've chosen to create this huge TBR. I'm obviously not going to read them all, but I'm going to be choosing from this pile over the month of November. I'm super excited to get to all of them. I think they're just all fantastic options for Nonfiction November, and especially the 3 Indigenous authored books I will be making a priority because I want to read for the Skoden Readathon as well as Nonfiction November. So we have those 3 books, one of which is the Book Naturalist pick. So obviously we'll definitely be getting to that one. And then the other one that I most certainly will be getting to is Red Famine, because I'm buddy reading this one, as I said, with Rachel. And then outside of that, I'm just going to be reading as my whims take me, as my mood strikes. So we shall see what I get up to. I hope that you are all going to be participating in Nonfiction November, and maybe even the Skoden Readathon. I think they're both excellent events, and really fun ways to organize your reading for the month of November. I hope you're all doing well and finding some great books to read, and I will talk to you later.